Well, ho ho ho, vinyl community. It's me, that jolly man with the white beard, coming down your digital chimney to show you some Christmas records. I do not have the old traditional Christmas records that I grew up with, listening to. Of course, we had the inevitable Bing Crosby Merry Christmas album, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, the Harry Simeon Chorale, and a host of others. So I have mostly a little more modern stuff than that, or maybe slightly more modern. And I also want to show a couple that I don't have on vinyl, but are particular favorites, including what you're hearing in the background right now, which is a Music Box Christmas. I did have this on vinyl, but I pretty much wore that one out before getting it on CD, so that's what I have to show now. And another one that I just want to give a salute to is this great album by the Roaches, Maggie and Terry and Suzy, doing Christmas music on We Three Kings. And this is a real blend of very serious devotional Christmas music and some really wacky and satirical bits, like a very funny take on Frosty the Snowman. That's a really enjoyable one to listen to in the season. Okay, getting down to the good vinyl stuff. Here's John Anderson, of course best known as the singer from Yes. Three Ships, the 1985 release on Elektra. I shouldn't have given it away, because just showing you the back cover I should quiz, what decade is this from? Because if this were any more 80s, he'd have to be wearing shoulder pads and hot pink leg warmers. But this contains some original inspirational pieces, a little new agey by John, as well as traditional songs like Three Ships, Ding Dong Merrily on High, The Holly and the Ivy, and so on. Got a nice inner sleeve with handwritten lyrics and doodles. A Christmas 1975 release from the Irish band Horselips, known for their blend of rock with traditional Celtic folk sounds, and sometimes compared to Jethro Tull due to their occasional use of flute. And this was a private Christmas release on their own Horselips Records label, with the catalog number Moo 9. I don't know, horses don't moo. And this is an all-acoustic album. Some of the tracks are in the Irish language, which I will not attempt to pronounce. Next up, one that people will recognize, the Beatles' Christmas album. This, however, is not an original. This is a counterfeit copy. Never actually owned the original or any of the original individual releases. It does have a reproduction of the original Apple label. If you look carefully around the whole of the record, you can see that it was actually just photographed from an original copy, and you can see a bit of the original whole actually in the photograph. Next up, great fingerstyle guitarist John Fahey with his first Christmas album, The New Possibility. This features a lot of very traditional Christmas melodies, Joy to the World, What Child Is This, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, O Come All Ye Faithful, and on and on. Performed solo guitar. It's a very soothing, slightly meditative kind of album. Not a jolly Christmas album, but something that really everyone can enjoy. This copy is not the original, but it is still on the Tacoma label. This is the split red and green colored reissue from Newbury Comics. And the sequel to that album was Christmas with John Fahey Volume 2. And this one differs from the first one in that most of the tracks on side one are duets with second guitarist Richard Ruskin. And they are mostly the traditional songs, O Holy Night, O Tannenbaum, Angels We Have Heard on High, Jingle Bells, and so on. And then side 2 is parts 1 and 2 of the original Christmas Fantasy. Now moving on to 7-inch releases. This is one I was so excited to find at the time. It was not easy to get back in 1976 when this was released. The Jethro Tull Christmas EP featuring Ring Out Solstice Bells. As I said, this was released for Christmas 1976 in advance of the 1977 album Songs from the Wood, which is the album that contains Ring Out Solstice Bells. So that was an unreleased track at the time. 2 of the other tracks on here are unreleased recordings from 1974, Pan Dance and March the Mad Scientist. Pan Dance is an instrumental featuring the string quartet augmenting the band. And March the Mad Scientist is credited here as just Ian Anderson on vocal, acoustic guitar, and electric piano, and Jeffrey Hammond on string bass. When the song was released on the remastered version of Minstrel in the Gallery, they said that it was John Evan playing the piano on this, so I don't know which credit is correct. And I also have the promotional radio station copy of that, released as a 12-inch. This copy is still sealed. This might be the only record I even own that's still sealed. Usually if I buy a sealed album, I will play it, but I have a number of copies of the original 7-inch from different countries, different versions of it. Continuing with 7-inch releases, we'll start with Kate Bush, December Will Be Magic Again. Maybe not a strictly Christmas song, very Christmassy sleeve, and she does mention Bing Crosby and White Christmas in the lyrics. Definitely a Christmas song, Silent Night by Can. This is a very sort of proto-techno approach to Silent Night, released in 1976. They stretch the melody out over a motoric kind of beat. Another prog rock take on Silent Night is this flexi disc by Robert Fripp performing Silent Night a la Frippertronics. And this disc was an insert in the art magazine Praxis 3 from December 1979. And there is the portion featuring Fripp. Okay, now, this very famous band from England, the Dumbbells. Who, you might say? Who are the Dumbbells? They are rumored to be Roxy Music. I think it's more likely that it's just 1 or 2 members of Roxy Music, certainly Phil Manzanera being one of them. And this, titled Giddy Up, is actually an arrangement of Leroy Anderson's Sleigh Ride. So the Giddy Up is as in Giddy Up, Giddy Up, Giddy Up, Let's Go. And the B-side is A Christmas Dream, credited to the Dumbbells, which is actually a retitled version of a Phil Manzanera solo track, Europe 70-1. Here's a real classic, a lot of you must know this one, Father Christmas by the Kinks from 1977. This is a particular favorite of mine. I always get a little choked up at the break at the end with Have Yourself a Very Merry Christmas. From 1975, Greg Lake, I Believe in Father Christmas. And the wonderful B-side, everybody knows I Believe in Father Christmas. There was a version of it on Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Works Volume 2. But the B-side really encapsulates the true meaning of Christmas, humbug. And yet another one that's pretty familiar to everybody, Paul McCartney, Wonderful Christmas Time, backed with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reggae. That's one that you hear so much negativity about that song. People hate that song. I don't know why. I think it's a great one. Another proggy take on a Christmas song, Mike Oldfield, In Dulci Jubilo, which better known to me as Good Christian Men Rejoice. and remember being familiar with the song Good Christian Men Rejoice from one of those Christmas records that we had when I was a kid, one of those Firestone Christmas albums. And that song was sung by Nikolai Yeda, and I just was always kind of hooked in by the accent he had in doing that song. Here's another one that doesn't always get a lot of love, but I enjoy it. I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas by Gayla Peavy, and you can see on this custom Columbia label, it's got a hippopotamus surrounded by holly leaves or mistletoe, and the B-side is Are My Ears On Straight. This was from back in 1953, and apparently originally released as a 78. This is a regular 45. This is a song that I used to hear a lot in the 70s on the Dr. Demento radio program, and I thought it was kind of an obscurity, but somehow it has become really well known in the 21st century, long after it was recorded, long after those airplays on Dr. Demento. So there you go, a second life for the song. Another, maybe not really a Christmas song, but one that certainly mentions Christmas, The Pretenders, 2,000 Miles. This is a British edition in a thick, glossy, fold-out, gatefold picture sleeve. And back to the Roaches. Hallelujah Chorus. I remember seeing the Roaches perform the Hallelujah Chorus on Saturday Night Live, and a particular striking part of their presentation was Suzy Roach standing with her feet planted about 6 feet apart on the stage. Very aggressive look for singing the Hallelujah Chorus. Back to the 60s, Royal Guardsmen, Snoopy's Christmas. Of course, a sequel to Snoopy versus the Red Baron. And the B-side, It Kinda Looks Like Christmas. A little more serious note, Gaudete by Steeleye Span. The old hymn, Gaudete, Gaudete, Christus est natus, ex Maria Virgine Gaudete. Rejoice, rejoice, Christ is born of the Virgin Mary, rejoice. And on the B-side, The Holly and the Ivy. Saving the best for last, as you knew I had to, the wonderful Ms. Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop with Some Things for Christmas. A snake, some mice, some glue, and a hole, too. This is on the Music-Core label with the B-side, Mr. Santa. And yes, I was a fan of Sherry Lewis when she had her TV show back in the early 60s. I think she was my first TV crush. Thank you all for watching. Happy holidays to all, and I will talk with you again soon. Merry Christmas.